Wow, it is really starting to happen. Slowly but surely, Tesla cars are starting to be able to drive themselves. So a couple of days ago, Tesla released a fleet-wide update. It's only available to a couple of hundred cars, which out of the context of the 1 million wide fleet is only about 1 or 2% so far, but it is being rolled out throughout the whole fleet. And that's the new update or a new feature which has been released through Tesla's famous free over-the-air updates. This time the car can stop itself at stop signs and at traffic lights as well, which is quite incredible. So this comes on the back of the previous release. So in the US, at around Christmas time, owners got to be able to see through the UI, through the user interface, what the car was seeing as far as traffic lights are concerned anyway. And so the driver could see that the car could tell the difference between red, green and amber lights, but the car wasn't doing anything, wasn't responding to that in any way. In Australia, this is starting to be released now, but in the US, they're up to the next stage now, which is where the car starts to act on what it sees. Now, I really like the way Tesla has made this work, in that safety is obviously at the forefront, in that they've tried to minimize the chance, or pretty much remove altogether the chance of any false negatives, in that the car is going to stop at every single stop sign, of course, but at every single traffic light as well, irrespective of whether it's red, green or amber. And the reason being is, look, no doubt the car already knows what it needs to do, and in the vast majority of cases I'm sure it could complete the whole procedure pretty much flawlessly. But the reason why it's being released this way is obviously the artificial engine needs a huge amount of data in order to discover and be able to learn from these fairly rare, as Elon calls them, these edge cases. If you're a statistician, it's the tails of the normal distribution bell curve. So these are events that happen very infrequently. As the saying goes, real life can be stranger than fiction. So these are events that are virtually impossible to model. If they're not impossible, they're incredibly difficult. And the reason why the driver has to provide feedback, so the way it works is the car will first of all give the driver plenty of notice. So I've seen some videos of Model X and Model S owners, and there's videos of Model 3 owners coming out now quite quickly as well. But the videos that I've seen, at least with the Model X and the Model S cars, you'll get a you'll get a message saying that the car is about to slow down because of a traffic light or traffic obstruction. I'm not sure exactly what the wording is. And then the car will slowly start to slow down. So when you see the message, it gives you a chance to prepare to override it. So if it's a green light, as soon as the car starts to slow down, all the driver needs to do is apply a little bit of pressure to the accelerator. That overrides it, and the car keeps on going through the green light. So it still relies on human input. Like I said, it's for those edge cases to give Tesla a chance to gather enough data so that the AI engine can process it, learn from it, and then we get the next upgrade when it gets downloaded with the next version. No doubt this is going to be fairly similar to what we've seen with Navigator and Autopilot. And Navigator and Autopilot is, in my experience at least, virtually flawless. But when we started, it was a little bit clumsy in that, and it was a little bit unsure of itself. So you had to, first of all, the driver had to provide the input. So the driver had to tell the car when you wanted the car to change lanes, and to do so you would have to press the indicator. I've done quite a few, I've done a couple of videos on this. I'll include links in the description section below so you can have a look. But yeah, the driver would have to press the indicator, and it was only upon the driver doing that the car would then change lanes. And surely, and fairly quickly actually, we, at least here in Australia, we progressed to navigate on autopilot, where what the car would do is it would monitor both lanes, and depending on the setting that you were in, so Mad Max was the most aggressive setting, but you could set the car to change lanes as frequently or as aggressively as you like. But if you were in a lane that the car perceived to be slower and the lane next to that lane was moving faster, then it would let you know that it was about to change lanes, and you could actually set it for the car to do the whole procedure completely autonomously. When I say completely autonomously, just to be 100% precise, it doesn't mean you can have your hands off the steering wheel, and there was still a little bit of driver input in that you had to apply a little bit of pressure to the steering wheel just so that the car would know that you do have your hands on the steering wheel and you're ready to take over at a moment's notice. So when it began, when you press the indicator, it would take some time before it changed lanes, but with the next update, the lane change was just really confident and quite quick, as fast as a human driver, possibly even faster. So that happened all fairly quickly once Tesla started getting all this data and allowing the AI engine to process it. And no doubt this is the first or the second iteration. The first iteration where the car actually stops on its own, as far as the public is concerned anyway, and no doubt over the next couple of months we'll get quite a bit of data, and the next version is going to enable perhaps the driver not to have to provide that confirmation, and then the car will be able to stop on a red light but keep going on a green light, which will be absolutely game changing. As to when we can expect this in Australia, well, if we go by the time frame set for the first part of this, which was just the visualization of the traffic lights, that was, as I said, in the US at around Christmas time. It's just starting to be released here in Australia. We're at the end of April now, so roughly about a 4-month delay. So if we use that as a bit of a guide, then possibly August or September in Australia, possibly earlier, possibly later, who knows, but I'll definitely be keeping an eye on what happens. To put this into context as far as full self-driving is concerned, so this starts to fill that last missing gap, in that if you think of it as a 3-legged stool, we've got 2 legs in place already, so the car can do, like I said, it can drive pretty much virtually flawlessly in freeway situations, at fairly high speed on highways, and change lanes by itself, stop for the car in front, accelerate to try and get in between cars in the adjacent lane without being too close to the car in front or to the car behind. So it does all that autonomously now, and it's fantastic to watch, but you do still obviously have to keep your hands on the steering wheel to take over at a moment's notice, because it is still in beta mode. Now, the second part of this, or the second leg of this tool, is that very confined confined space, so driving in car parks, and that's where Smart Summon comes in. We've had that released here in Australia as well. I've done a video about that one too, so check that one out if you haven't seen it yet. But that's basically where you can summon the car or call the car to come to you from up to about 50 or 60 meters away in a car park. So we're starting to solve that part of the driving puzzle. We've got the high speed driving on freeways and highways, so we're just missing that bit in between, which is that suburban style driving, maybe at a 60 kilometre an hour or an 80 kilometre an hour speed limit, where traffic lights and stop signs are quite prevalent, as are perhaps roundabouts, at least here in Australia and in the US actually as well. So haven't heard any news about roundabouts just yet, but yeah, definitely traffic lights and stop signs, which is incredibly exciting. To put this into a wider context again, every time one of these features comes out, it just reinforces, to me at least, just how far ahead Tesla are compared to the rest of the market. So for 3 or 4 years now, I've been hearing, it's mainly the analysts on Wall Street, or the analysts that cover Tesla as a stock on the stock exchange, that have been mentioning that it's imminent, that competition is coming, competition is just around the corner, and they use that narrative to justify whatever their view may be on the stock. Generally it's a negative view, or it's not as positive as some people that follow the company very closely would say. But put that to the side. What I'm trying to say is that there's a lot of people have been expecting this competition, and 3 or 4 years down the track, it's nowhere to be seen. Not only that, every time a new feature like this comes out, it just confirms to me just how far, not only how far ahead Tesla is, but it just confirms to me how far Tesla have stretched their lead. It's incredible. People were saying just recently with this virus situation that it's going to enable legacy car makers to catch up to Tesla. I think that's nonsense, personally. If anything, let me just put this into, let me separate the competition into 3 segments. So, and it's interesting that you have to do that, because there is no one single competitor that has all 3 parts to this. So the first is the legacy car makers, and they are nowhere near Tesla. The closest would perhaps be maybe GM. So GM has got the Cruise platform, and they're starting to come out with a few electric vehicles in the US. You could argue that there's other legacy car makers that are closer, but if you look at this holistically, if you're looking at this from not just the battery tech and the EV driving perspective, but also the autonomous capability, so on that front, so legacy automakers are a fair way behind. The other competitors, so the other electric vehicle manufacturers, or those that focus purely on electric vehicles, so the likes of Rivian, they've got their 2 utes and their ute and their SUV coming out next year. But there's the likes of Rimac in China. There's hundreds of EV manufacturers in China. The 2 biggest are probably NIO and BYD. That's a fairly big one. Byton, Fisker, for example, they've got a fairly interesting ownership model that they're going with. Faraday Future, who knows what's happened to them. I haven't seen anything for a long time from them. So all these other EV only manufacturers are pretty much only focusing on the EV aspect of it, and I'm not hearing too much on the autonomous front. As far as that's concerned, there are manufacturers that focus only on the autonomous technology. The biggest one would probably be Google's Waymo in terms of how advanced they are. So they've got their trial in Phoenix, Arizona. But then we've got GM Cruise, which I've already mentioned, but the likes of Argo AI with their partnership with Volkswagen. Zoox is a fairly interesting one. So they've come out with a video of a test drive just recently, which was actually quite impressive. But they're still years and years behind Tesla, and like I said, Tesla just keeps on pulling ahead faster and faster. So it's not a question of when will the rest of the market catch up. At least in the foreseeable future, over the next 2 or 3 years, I don't see perhaps in the next 5 years, I just don't see Tesla having any competition at all. And then you've got to scratch your head. I mean, Elon has mentioned himself, Tesla can't manufacture all the cars that we need on the road. So, what's going to happen as inevitably cars shift to being electric and autonomous in the not too far distant future as well. You've really got to ask yourself the question as to what the outcome here is. I have no idea. I really don't know. I have some suspicions, which is that Tesla is just going to really expand at a huge pace. But love to hear what you think. If you have any opinions, please do jot them down in the comment section below, and I'll include my email address in the description section below as well, and my Twitter handle there as well, so feel free to reach out and give me your opinions on that front as well. So look, that's pretty much it. I'll mention one thing, that the version that I'm talking about here is the 2020.12.6 version. So that's the latest update, which has this feature which enables the car to stop for traffic lights and stop signs, which has been released, like I said, only to a couple of hundred people so far, but no doubt it's going to be rolled out fairly quickly to the whole wide fleet. Look, I hope you got some value, and I hope you got something out of this. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Please also make sure that you subscribe and hit the notification bell next to the subscribe button, so that you can get alerted to new videos as and when they come out. As always, actually, before I go, one thing I almost forgot: if you are in the market to buy a Tesla, think about using a referral code, because it will give you 1,500 kilometers of free supercharging. I'll include my referral code in the description section below. I'll also paste it up here on top of the video in post editing. So feel free to use my code. That way I'll also receive 1,500 kilometers of free supercharging as well. And I'll be very, very thankful, and I'll open myself to help you throughout the delivery process as well, and answer any questions if you have any while you're waiting for your car to come. Just keep in mind, I work 9 to 5 and on weekends as well, so I can only do this after hours. But that really is it from me for now. So up until the next video, as always, stay safe, stay sustainable, and stay ahead of the curve. Ciao.